Good morning, cinephiles. It is September 27th of the year 2021, and it's time for the morning movie show here on Cinemateq. It's going to be a good time today. We're going to catch up on some of the news that we missed out on over the weekend, including a new Extraction 2 trailer featuring Chris Hemsworth. Presumably, I thought he died in the first one, but I guess we've worked our way around that one. And we also have some updates on the IATSE strike, the upcoming probable IATSE strike, as well as Jamie Foxx wanting to do some stuff, some casting news for Aquaman 2, some box office news, some good news for Dune, and then some even more good news for Dune, specifically Denis Villeneuve, and probably a lot more. We'll just have to see where the morning takes us, because you know there's going to be more film news as the day goes on. Monday, I think, typically tends to be a trailer drop day, so we might have to interrupt for some breaking trailer reactions, as is customary. So, with all of that said, hello, good morning. Let's get into this gosh darn thing. Hello, Dory. Good to see you again. Once again, you are not showing up as a concurrent viewer, so YouTube does not think you exist. I don't know why. I just find this fascinating. It also hurts me because I think the analytics that I get from you don't count because of this, but I haven't researched it too strongly. Anyways, number one new piece of news from over the weekend is that at a big old celebration event type thing that YouTube did, or not YouTube, that Netflix did, they announced and put out a bunch of trailers and clips for a bunch of different shows and films. And I think the biggest piece of surprise news, at least to me, was that there is an Extraction 2 trailer. Extraction being the action film that Chris Hemsworth and Netflix released in 2020, all about Chris Hemsworth being an extraction specialist. He goes into India, kills a bunch of people, and tries to help a young child whose father is like a drug dealer or something. The plot in that film is not so important. What is important, though, is that at the end of that film, we're pretty sure that Chris Hemsworth is dead. I mean, not Chris Hemsworth, but his character. But then there's also a little bit of mystery about it. So I'm assuming that this Extraction 2 trailer kind of gives us a little bit of a clue, bit of a hint, because I'm almost fairly certain, based on the headlines I've seen, that Chris Hemsworth is in fact coming back for the second one. But I guess if we were to watch the trailer, that would give us an indication as to how he could be there. And yes, Dory, it is the Tadum thing, which is a weird name for a thing, because if you didn't know this, the Tadum sound at the end of all Netflix trailers and when they like load a new show or whatever, that's actually Kevin Spacey's character in House of Cards hitting his knuckle against the table. That is the Tadum sound. So Kevin Spacey is always with you no matter where you go if you're on Netflix. He's always following you. Yeah, it's creepy. Yeah, it is. So let's just read through this a little bit, see if Cinema Blend can give us a bit more info before we actually watch the gosh darn trailer. In early 2020, when we were strapped for big action movies and in lockdown, Extraction was the movie that picked us back up. That is subjective, obviously. This is also a Russo brothers film, or at least something that they produced. During Netflix's Tadum Global event, the streaming service showed off a first look at Extraction 2, and it picks up right where the first movie left off. You know, if I'm going to be doing a reaction to this trailer, I should probably just stop reading about it and actually just watch it. That sounds like a good idea for me, or for all of us. So let's see what we can see. Good thing I've already got this pulled up. It's like I'm a professional or something. I should probably do a little intro for this if I were to clip it later. Hello, this is going to seem weird if you're watching this whole live stream back, but I'm just going to like intro this like it were a video on the channel. Hello everyone, welcome to Cinemateq, and we are reacting to the brand new Extraction 2 trailer. Let's check it out. Got a helicopter flying in. Assuming that this is just... Yeah, these are scenes from the original film.
You're hoping if you spin the chamber enough times, you're gonna catch
Chris Hemsworth on the bridge being a badass, getting shot. Yeah, this is all from the first film. Oh my god. If you drop your gun, you're definitely dead. That's what GoldenEye taught me. Say what you will about this film, the action sequences were pretty good. It was also surprising to me that they could do it for a budget of like $60 million, but I think that's largely because they shot it in India. They were able to just do it for much cheaper. Chris Hemsworth, no. Don't bleed out from the mouth. That's the other indication that you're dead. And he's in the river. So far, nothing new. We're about halfway through. Ooh, a fade to black. Is he...
Drown, not by falling into the river.
You don't drown by falling into the river.
Submerged in it.
I mean, yes, that is how drowning works. And that inspirational talk is enough to bring Chris Hemsworth, Tyler Rake, back from the dead. Rake lives! Hashtag! So that's all we get. Okay. Thank you, Internet, for hyping me up on a shot of Chris Hemsworth waking up underwater. What do we make of this? We don't get anything new. We don't see any new scenes from the film. That scene of him waking up might not even be in the new film. That could simply just be for this teaser alone. It probably... I guess it also could be the very first shot of the film, but that doesn't really do anything for us since the last shot of the first film has the kid in a pool and you can see kind of a figure watching over him. I think it's meant to be kind of a moment of suspense because you don't know if it's Tyler or if it's someone else who has actually found the kid and is going to do something not so great to him. But in this case, it appears that we're getting him waking up and then perhaps... as soon as he leaves this river after being shot multiple times and falling from a fairly substantial height, just goes back to the kid, I guess, and meets him by the pool. So movie 2 probably starting right where movie 1 kind of finishes. And that appears to be what we're doing with Extraction 2. I kind of hope that they don't tread on the same ground where it's just Chris Hemsworth protecting the kid. Unless they just use that as a way of raising the stakes so much higher, the action stakes particularly. Like, maybe by keeping the plot that simple, they're able to just go for it really, really hard. Maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know about that. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I was really hoping this was going to be a more substantial trailer, but it is not one of those things. So thank you, Netflix, but also... God damn it, Netflix. Why did you have to do this? Dory saying that they didn't see a good Netflix trailer during the Tadum event. Well, if this is the kind of stuff they were putting out, I can kind of see why. So, moving on then from the Extraction trailer, let us instead focus on something that I have been talking about a good deal over the last week, and that is the IATSE strike. And I just want to give everyone a little bit of a tea cheers. Hopefully this has cooled down enough. Yes, very Earl Grey tea hot. So as we've been talking about previously, IATSE, which covers a number of different locals in the United States, and a lot of different film workers are part of these locals, the set dressers, the cinematographers, the editors in the United States, so many others. They have been threatening a strike for the last week or so, and it appears that support for IATSE is only growing. As this Deadline article by David Robb shows us, the DGA, which is the Directors Guild of America, the Screen Actors Guild, and the Writers Guild East, the Writers Guild West, and the Teamsters have now expressed solidarity. So when we were talking about this last week, it was only SAG and the Writers Guild East that had expressed solidarity. So we have now added the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild West, and the Teamsters to it. So this is now turning into a big old thing, because this is pretty much every single film worker that you can think of that works on union shoots. They are now represented in these groups. I'm not sure anyone who would fall outside of this. The craft person, but I kind of figured that they were going to be included here somewhere as well. So it looks like there's some updates going on here, so let's just read through it. Hollywood's unions have issued a statement of support for IATSE in its efforts to reach a new film and TV contract with management's AMPTP, which is the movie studios, saying that they stand in solidarity with IATSE as it prepares to conduct a strike authorization among its members. That strike authorization vote is scheduled to happen between October 1st and October 3rd. The statement was signed by leaders of the DGA, SAG-AFTRA, and WGA East and the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, saying, on behalf of our hundreds of thousands of members working across film and television, we stand in solidarity with our IATSE brothers, sisters, and kin, the unions say. The basic quality of life and living wage rights they're fighting for in their negotiations are the issues that impact us all, or all of us, who work on sets and production. We stand with IATSE. The joint statement was signed by DGA President Leslie Linka Glader and the National Executive Director Russell Hollander, SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher, and the National Executive Director Duncan Crabtree Ireland, WGA East President Michael Winship, and Executive Director Lowell Peterson, and Teamsters President James P. Hoffa. Like Jimmy Hoffa? Separately, the WGA's West newly elected officers said in a tweet that we stand with our sisters and brothers of IATSE in their worthy fight for safe working conditions and a fair contract. The tweet was signed in solidarity by President Meredith Steinem, Vice President Michelle Mulroney, and Secretary-Treasurer Betsy Thomas. So a lot of support now going forward for IATSE. I'm happy to see this. I'll keep saying it on this channel. We are a pro-labor channel. I am a pro-labor person. And seeing the solidarity in the film world amongst film workers makes me very happy. And I'm hoping that with all of this support, IATSE can get the deal that they want done and avoid a strike. But it seems that like if they do go on strike, they will have many, many people in their corner, including this channel. Tea is still hot. And now this is not the only bit of IATSE news that we're going to be discussing here quickly. There was an interesting thing that happened. I guess this would have been on Friday when this was announced. And this is once again David Robb, who I imagine is just covering this fully for Deadline. So we're probably going to be looking at a lot of his articles. IATSE tells California legislators a strike would effectively shut down film and television production in state. So in my mind, IATSE does this so that legislators understand what is at stake. And part of me wonders how much the film studios, the big production studios, are perhaps trying to lobby California legislators currently so that in the future, if they were to legislate or if they were to start thinking about the state of the California economy as an example, these film studios may try to legislate back to work legislation through lobbying efforts in the California state legislature. So I'm thinking that IATSE is just giving them a heads up and saying like a strike would effectively shut us down. So maybe it'd be a good idea if we all try to get to a conclusion before that has to happen, because it won't look good for you if you have to legislate us back to work, especially since their governor is a Democratic governor and they're supposed to be a little bit more labor friendly, although they're really not. Nobody really likes labor in America except for people who are in unions and those of us who support unions. So let's just go through this article a little bit. Saying that a strike would effectively shut down California state and television production, IATSE has told California lawmakers that it is both outrageous and immoral that the studios oppose basic worker rights, an opposition that may lead to a highly successful industry's shutdown. The union sent a nearly identical letter on Friday to legislators in New York, saying that a strike would effectively shut down a majority of New York state film and television production industry. So this is not just California. This is both coasts. In a letter to, and actually, now that I think about this, it brings up an interesting point in terms of shooting in places like Georgia, which is where a lot of production happens in Georgia. In fact, I think Tyler Perry has an entire like studio complex thing that's pretty massive in Georgia, and I wonder if the IATSE locals cover those territories as well. In a letter to state legislatures, the California IATSE Council said that the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers is refusing union proposals to provide safe working conditions, including meal and rest periods for our members. Given their position, IATSE is compelled to call for strike authorization vote. Given your long-standing support of the California Film and Television Tax Credit Program, for which we are deeply appreciative and which has had such a large impact on production and jobs in our state, we believe it is important for California state policymakers to know the facts, the union told legislators in a letter dated September 23rd. On the same day, IATSE President Matthew Loeb told his members, "We are at a stage where the employers have made this struggle about power, not reason. Therefore, we are initiating a strike vote to authorize me to call one if necessary." The letter to the legislatures was signed by Tom Davis, president of the California IATSE Council and business manager of IATSE Grips Local 80, and the council's legislative co-chairs Rebecca Ryan, national executive director of IATSE Cinematographers Guild, IATSE Local 600, 667 if you're in Canada, Scott Bernard, business rep of IATSE Local 695, and Josh Beaumont, business rep of San Francisco IATSE Local 16. And we have the full letter. I think I might just read this last paragraph because it kind of gets into the facts. IATSE is currently in collective bargaining with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which represents media megacorporations collectively worth trillions of dollars. The AMPTP is refusing union proposals to provide safe working conditions, including meal and rest periods for our members. Given their position, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, is compelled to call for strike authorization vote. A strike would effectively shut down California state film and television production. The most grievous workplace conditions we are trying to improve include excessively unsafe and harmful working hours, including Fridays that often last well into Saturday, aka Fraturdays. Ugh, that doesn't sound great. Wages for the lowest paid crafts that cannot sustain a decent living. Incredibly long work days without a break or a meal. Really? Jesus. To put down equipment, to unmask and to get fresh air, or to just sit down. Consistent failure to provide reasonable rest between work days and on weekends. So in there, they're referring to the amount of time between your wrap time and your call time the next day. It can be real shitty. Believe you me, I've worked on sets before. It can get real bad. Substandard rates for the same work on new media streaming projects, even on productions with budgets that rival or exceed those of traditionally released blockbusters. This relief is being provided to the most profitable companies on the planet, including Apple and Amazon. And I believe this is just the remainder of the article or of that letter. But I think that gives us a pretty good idea as to what IATSE is asking for and what they see as being the big problem with what the studios are getting away with, especially in terms of big media players now like Apple and Amazon. Big old can of shit. And yeah, I guess just to go back to this, just so you guys have a bit of context, when they talk here about incredibly long work days without a break or for a meal, typically, and this is true in Canada, I assume that it would be similar in the United States, the typical work day is called an 11+1. And even sometimes, depending on the union, it's a 10+1, where you have a 10-hour working day plus an hour for lunch. And during that hour for lunch, you are like not allowed to work. Or supposedly, that's what's supposed to happen. You are not allowed to work for that hour, which is why they call it a 10+1 or an 11+1. So, and then beyond that, when they're talking about unsafe and harmful working hours, it includes Fridays that often go well into Saturdays. You have a particular amount of time that you are supposed to get in between your wrap time and your call time. if your wrap time, let's say, is midnight, then you are not supposed to be called in to work for your call time until I think like 12 noon. Like I think it's typically 12 hours of turnaround is what they suggest. So even if you work a 16-hour day, you're not supposed to start work for 12 hours after that. So call time, which could have been scheduled for earlier in the day, would be pushed back by the amount of hours necessary in order to get that 12 hours of turnaround time. And the catch to all this is that if they don't do this, then you just get paid overtime for those hours, which can be substantial. But if you're working a 16-hour day and then you have to go in for call the next day after 6 hours away from set, not 6 hours sleeping, but just 6 hours away from set, you are coming in tired, you are coming in overworked, and you are putting your own safety at risk. And so the main point that IATSE is trying to make here is that the money that they may be making in overtime does not justify the risk, and that a lot of these best practices that are supposed to be employed are not being followed, because it seems like a lot of these larger media companies like Apple and Amazon are classifying their big budget shows as new media as opposed to traditional television. So yeah, it's not good. We have Dory saying unions might be screwing themselves. Corporations are cutthroat. They have a race to the bottom reward system. Corporations have a race to the bottom reward system because the faster they can do that, the more money that they can make, the more profit they can make. I honestly don't agree with the idea that unions may be screwing themselves, because I believe you're making that argument in the context of, well, studios will just go somewhere else and film in places where the union can't be. But as it stands, like, they kind of can't. The infrastructure, the film infrastructure in the United States is probably unrivaled anywhere else in the world. And for the amount of content that needs to get made, you have to do it in the United States. Like, it's just kind of something that they have to do. Along with that, and I think I mentioned this before when talking about this, is that when unions strike and show that they can get better working conditions for their members, it's something that is seen worldwide, which then prompts other people to organize and to do these things. So the union is a perpetuating ideal. And what we really need to do is just support the workers and get them what they need. And beyond that, allow other workers to organize and not get in their way if they want to. Amazon, for example. So I'm going to continue to keep everyone up to date on this. The strike vote authorization begins on October 1st, which I mentioned, and that will be this Friday. So if that vote starts in the morning and there's any news that pops up from it, we will be able to chat about it. I'm just keeping an eye on to see if any big trailers get released this morning. Doesn't look like anything has happened yet. So let's move on to the next piece of news. This one's coming from Cinema Blend writer Catherine Webb. Jamie Foxx wants to remake a Stephen King movie with a black lead. But which Stephen King movie is it? Let's find out. Jamie Foxx has built an incredible legacy as an actor and performer. All right, we don't need to talk up the ego of Jamie Foxx on this channel. At this point, there are very few film genres that Jamie Foxx hasn't dabbled in. He's equally comfortable in indie dramas, kid-friendly musicals, police thrillers, and superhero blockbusters. However, he hasn't really starred in a tried-and-true horror film, though it sounds like that could soon change. In an interview with Men's Health magazine, the Oscar winner revealed that what drives him to continue to create. Opportunity gets me moving. Great idea. Then I want to sleep, and I woke up, and the shit was in my dream. Now I wrote the Black Ocean's 11, or I just rewrote Misery. That doesn't seem like he's... I don't know if this quote is doing what Cinema Blend thinks it's doing. Let's keep going, though, just to confirm. Jamie Foxx said that he was inspired to reframe the horror master's terrifying tale of an obsessed fan kidnapping her favorite author by his own encounter during a charity auction. He spent the evening with a couple and was initially swept up by their praise for him, but eventually it got weird. Uh-oh. The Star didn't elaborate much more on just how the experience would inform his retelling of Stephen King's Misery, but it's definitely intriguing to imagine how a story like that might unfold. Misery was published in 1987 and tells the story of a romance between novelist Paul Sheldon, at that time played by James Caan, I believe, who is seemingly saved from the wreckage of a car accident by Annie Wilkes, played by Catherine Bates, pretty sure, a nurse who happens to be his biggest fan. But when he realizes he's been held captive by her, he must act quickly to stay alive. And they just talk about the other times that Misery has been adapted. So yeah, this just kind of sounds like it's Jamie Foxx putting out good vibes into the world, hoping that someone will pick it up and allow him to adapt it. I don't really see why they wouldn't, and honestly, this kind of seems like something that Netflix would do. Just give Jamie Foxx like a bunch of money and get the rights from Stephen King, since I'm sure Netflix still has a fairly good working relationship with Stephen King. And there you go. Misery remade, starring Jamie Foxx. But then in that case, dear cinephiles, who is playing the Annie Wilkes character? And how substantially do they change the plot? As this article seemed to suggest, there were experiences that Jamie Foxx went through that may change how he would retell the story. And if he were to bring it back to his own personal experiences, then does Annie Wilkes turn into a couple? Do they try weird sex stuff? All of this is a possibility. And just like Jamie Foxx is trying to manifest his own future by just putting this out there in the world, in the pages of Men's Health magazine, we too can manifest things by thinking about Jamie Foxx in weird sex scenes in a Misery remake on Netflix. We have this power. It's like Dory is going back to the union talk. Let's see. Also, Hollywood snobs will not respect or approve any movies or TV shows without their stamp of approval. The critics' voices will make or break this union fight. I don't see how the critics have anything to do with this. I honestly don't see how that would work. I mean, it's true that like Hollywood studios approve movies because, you know, they're spending millions of dollars on them. I don't know if I would call them snobs in that way. They're business people. That's how I like to think about them. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're saying here is true, but the critics' voices will make or break this union fight. I don't see that being true. I don't know why people would care about what critics have to say in terms of like what film workers are doing. And I think also critics will be behind the unions for the most part. That remains to be seen, but I imagine that more critics will fall kind of into my particular camp where I'm very pro-union. Especially because many journalists are now fighting for the right to unionize on their own. And I know that there are a number of newsrooms that have been unionized and are part of the Writers Guild of America East, or at least they tried to become part of that. So I think that the pro-union movement still exists fairly strongly in critic circles, but I guess we'll see what they have to say. But I honestly don't think that the critics will sway things one way or another. It'll ultimately come down to how long if the strike happens, it'll ultimately come down to how long the studios are, or how long California legislators are willing to go before forcing the unions back to work at the behest of the studios. Also, I see that Brent has joined us. Welcome. We are just talking about union stuff. The exciting realm of union things. But we've been talking about that enough. So let's now move on to another piece of Stephen King related news. We are getting very close to the spooky season, folks. October 1st, but a few days away. And it turns out that a new version of Stephen King's Salem Lot has recruited a Game of Thrones star. This is once again coming from Cinema Blend, written by Sarah El Mahoud. Let's see here. A number of upcoming Stephen King adaptations are on their way because, well, it's Stephen King. And that's true. His shit is really popular. This includes a movie for the horror author's second book, Salem's Lot. Much of the cast has already been lined up. Lewis Pullman will lead a cast, also including Spencer Treat Clark, Alfre Woodard, and William Spader. And as the movie begins production, Salem's Lot has also included Game of Thrones star Pilu Asbeck, who is pictured here. Looks like he was that guy from Game of Thrones who really wanted to fuck his sister. Wait, that doesn't really narrow things down, does it? Pilu Asbeck played Euron Greyjoy in the hit HBO series between season 6 and the character's death in season 8. Spoiler warning, sorry. In Salem's Lot, the Danish actor will play Richard Straker, who is the familiar of the vampire that is haunting the town of Salem's Lot throughout the story. Straker does a lot of evil doing in between the arrival of his master in the book. The casting information comes exclusive from The Hollywood Reporter. Okay. I'm actually kind of surprised by that. Even though this gentleman played kind of a villain in Game of Thrones, he was much more of a predominant villain. Didn't really play the role of someone who bowed to other people. In fact, a lot of his character was not being cool with Cersei Lannister, or like trying to have sex with Cersei Lannister and become king that way. He was all about his own power, his own greed, his whatever. So the fact that he is going to play kind of like the Igor in this film is kind of interesting. But I guess if they cast like some real tall dude to be more of the vampire type, come on, autofocus, and he can like kind of hunch down and get kind of small. Like I think he could probably play like the sniveling role. Rather, the role of a sniveling, subservient vampire. By the way, I'm pretty sure Salem's Lot is about vampires. Sorry about that spoiler warning. I should probably just put spoiler warning flashing over top of everything that I do, because I don't give a good gosh darn about spoilers. So, moving on then from this little bit of casting news. And if anyone is actually interested in Stephen King movies, let me know in the chat or in the comments below. Which Stephen King adaptation is your favorite and which one you're looking forward to most? I have not seen the original Salem's Lot, so I should probably check that out before this one comes out. Because, it's October, or it's almost October. You gotta watch all the horror movies. That is the law. So moving from casting news to more casting news, this one again coming from Cinema Blend, written by Adam Holmes. Aquaman 2, a longtime DC villain and key recast among Lost Kingdom's latest casting update. I don't think these headlines are that good. A longtime DC villain and key recast among Lost Kingdom's latest casting update. I mean, I get it. I know what they're saying. Maybe I'm just not very good at reading. This December will mark 3 years since Aquaman was released in theaters. Jesus Christ. Really? Okay. And we'll briefly reunite Jason Momoa's Arthur Curry. Oh, wow. We don't care about that. Fortunately, Aquaman 2, aka L'Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, has been filming for several months now and on track to arrive in late 2022. The latest update on the sequel's progress is all casting related and includes a longtime DC comic villain entering the picture and an important character from the first movie being recast. Starting off, India Moore, who starred as Angel Evangelista in the FX series Pose, has been tapped to play Karshan, who's been a Green Lantern adversary for decades in the comics, but can easily be thrown into Aquaman's corner of the DC universe. For those unfamiliar with the character, Karshan was once a regular tiger shark, but after being bombarded by radiation, it rapidly evolved into an intelligent humanoid predator with psionic powers. It's unclear if this transformation will be retained for Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom, or if Karshan will simply be one of the regular underwater-dwelling humanoids in the DC Extended Universe. Wild. So kind of like if Godzilla was a shark, but became a human instead. And this is India Moore. Okay. This woman will be a tiger shark person. Cool. And in more casting news, 300 star Vincent Regan. Let's take a look at this gentleman before we actually get into him. Or talk about who he is. So this guy. You know this guy. I've seen him in things. I can't remember what, but I have seen him in things. And not just 300 things either. We'll take the role of King Atlan, who Preacher's Graham McTavish played in the first Aquaman movie. For those who need a refresher, Atlan was the ruler of Atlantis before it sank into the ocean. In the present day, Arthur Curry found Atlan's corpse and retrieved the powerful trident of Atlantis that was still in its grasp. It's unclear if Atlan's presence in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will once again be through flashbacks or if some kind of resurrection is in store, like what went down in the comics. I imagine that would be the case. Like, I don't think you would recast for a notable actor to just put him in flashbacks, although maybe that's exactly what you would do. Maybe that's the kind of money that DC has. The final new face who's been unveiled for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is Portuguese actress Jenny Zhao, who is this person. I do not know who this is. I don't recognize her. Let's go back to the article and find out who she is. When making her English language debut in the sequel, Zhao will play an original character named Stingray. There's no way that the DC comic book universe has existed for this long and there has been no character named Stingray. I call bullshit. Zhao will play original character named Stingray, but it's unclear if this will be an ally or an enemy to our hero and his allies. It's also been confirmed that WandaVision's Randall Park will reprise marine biologist Dr. Stephen Shin in The Long Kingdom, having briefly played the character in Aquaman, most notably the mid-credits scene. Okay, so this is more just casting stuff. All right, so we don't actually get a lot here, although it is cool to see that Zendaya Moore has been cast as a living, breathing, walking tiger shark. Always going to be interested to see how they represent a tiger shark on screen. Hopefully it's like a little bit better than King Shark in the Suicide Squad. I am a King Shark stan, but only in the Harley Quinn animated series. So if they can give me like a tiger shark version of that in the DCEU, I'd be on board for it. Although I have a feeling they're not going to be playing this particular character as Karshan. They're not going to be playing them as comedic as my King Shark. So that's too bad. Also, Brent, I see that you referenced one of the greatest movies of all time, the original Judge Dredd from the 90s, starring Sylvester Stallone. It was actually on TV the other day. And not that I have a television subscription, but I do have a subscription to AMC Plus. And I just flipped that on to see if they'd started showing horror movies yet. And it was Judge Dredd, and I absolutely just let the movie play until that moment happened. I know that I could have gone and found it on the internet and just gone on with my day instead of waiting like an hour through commercials, but I really just wanted it to happen organically. And it did, and it was great. Also saying that The Mist was really good, talking about favorite Stephen King adaptation, and Dory here has added in Pet Sematary. The original Pet Sematary is pretty good, and you know what? I didn't mind the new Pet Sematary either. It seems like most adaptations of Stephen King stuff is pretty good. So that's great. Also saying that we might have one other concurrent viewer in here. I'm keeping track. I know who's in here and who's not. Ah, they're gone. Well, never mind. I was about to ask you to tell me about your favorite Stephen King adaptation, but you have been released back into the YouTube ether. Fare thee well. Godspeed. Well, Satan speed. Moving on now to an article that Dory sent to me in the Cinemateq Discord, which there is a link to in the description below. Synergy, baby. I do it. We now must talk about Paul Verhoeven's new film, Benedetta. And before I do that, I will have to say, hey, Dr. Udru is here. Excellent. Saying that The Dead Zone is his favorite Stephen King adaptation. Cronenberg for the win, of which I heartily agree. Cronenberg doing all the good things. And I think The Dead Zone just got put onto Netflix. So if you want to check it out, you should check it out there. But it's a very good movie. Christopher Walken doing Christopher Walken things in a David Cronenberg film. It's real cool. And it's kind of like in that in-between place for Cronenberg where like it's not as body horror heavy. Like it's certainly not like The Fly, and it's not like Scanners, and it's not like Videodrome, but he hadn't quite gone like full Crash, Madame Butterfly yet. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of like, I guess maybe, and Andrew, tell me if you agree with this or not. It's kind of closer to History of Violence, but maybe that's totally wrong. I'm thinking of like the gore aspects of it. Maybe I might be totally off on this. You know what? I'll rewatch The Dead Zone and I'll come back to this. But yes, Dory, thank you for sending in this article. Catholic protesters congregate outside Benedetta's New York Film Festival premiere. This is the new film from Paul Verhoeven. He is, of course, the director of such films as RoboCop and that one movie where the girl from Saved by the Bell has really weird sex in a pool. Showgirls. Showgirls. Oh my goodness, it is a Monday morning, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, Paul Verhoeven has this new film, Benedetta. It's all about lesbian Catholic nuns. And you know who doesn't appreciate lesbian Catholic nuns? Catholics, apparently. Hopefully there are images here. Yes, there were images of, or not images, there were protesters outside the premiere of Benedetta at the New York Film Festival. And I'll see if we can maybe get a little bit closer up on some of these wonderful points that these people are making. We vehemently protest the blasphemous lesbian movie Benedetta that insults the sanctity of Catholic nuns. And apparently they are from the American TFP. America Needs Fatima. What? Okay. And then this other guy has a sign that says, "Stop blasphemy now." What if we didn't, though? And then we have another one saying, "Why the endless insults to Jesus?" Oh, boy. So whether or not you agree with these people, I think it's kind of hilarious when people protest movies. This happened, I believe. I mean, this happens probably not so often, but I do remember back when Dogma was released, the Kevin Smith movie. It was protested against once again by Catholics, and I think there's even a moment at one of the protests where Kevin Smith is like interviewed as being one of the protesters, and there's clips of it online if you want to try to find it. And I think you can kind of tell that the person who's interviewing him is like, "I know who you are, but I don't want to say it out loud," or like they kind of realize it while they're talking to Kevin Smith, and he pretends to be one of the protesters. I think he thought it would be a good piece of marketing, and I think he was probably right. So I guess if I wanted to give my thoughts on these protests, good for you for using your right to protest. I feel like there's more important things in the world that you can be protesting other than nuns getting a little naked and making out. And I mean, this is a Paul Verhoeven movie, so they're doing more than just that. But I think there's probably better things you could be doing with your time. I really do. Oh, there's even more photos. Oh man, let's look at these. Let's see. "I'm Catholic. Stop attacking my faith." Because a couple of nuns making out is bad for their faith for some reason. Stop that. I mean, there's no way that says "stop defending God." That probably says something else. "Defamation is not free speech." I don't understand how nuns making out and being lesbians is defamation. A lawyer will have to explain that one to me, except that they won't, because that sign is very incorrect. "Catholics must affirm their faith in the public square." That's kind of just a declaration. That's not really a protest. I guess that they are reaffirming their faith by publicly protesting women being lovers, which is a weird way of going about their day-to-day lives. "Keep holy things holy." You know what? I gotta say that while I'm going through these, I can't help but just wanting to clap back at all of them while referencing all of those times that Catholic priests have molested children. You know? Like, where were these people when that was happening? Were they protesting their local churches and saying, "Hey, maybe don't fuck children"? I doubt it. I doubt it. Ah, Brent, you're right. Stop offending God. Yes, yes. The Almighty, all powerful, getting offended by a movie, which, if you follow the logic of creation, he made because we are all God's children, I believe. Doesn't seem to make much sense. It's almost like these people aren't great at logic. Reparation, reparation, reparation. What are you hoping to achieve with this? Do you want the box office money? Is that what you want? I think this guy right here in the middle, I think he's asking for a cut of the box office. He wants to be a producer on this film. And then this person over here on the left saying, "Mary, we love you." I assume referring to Mary Magdalene. And he wants to make sure that you know that we, underline all caps, reject this all caps red letter blasphemy. Oh boy. Wait until these guys see my tattoos. Yeah, I think that's about all of the signs that we can look at. I'd love to know from you guys watching, though, how you feel about these protests. Obviously, they're not going to amount for much, and if anything, it's just another point of advertisement. They're honestly just helping the film. Like, of course, I was going to watch a Paul Verhoeven movie about lesbian nuns. I was going to watch a Paul Verhoeven movie about anything. And now that I know that by seeing this movie, I'm annoying Catholics, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do it twice in one day. Brent asking, is this also a parade? There's a guy there holding a drum. It's not a parade as far as I know. This was all happening outside of the premiere of the film festival. So I doubt that like a Catholic parade was just walking by and they were like, "Hey, we have oddly appropriate signs. We should stop and protest this movie." Yeah. Andrew, or Doctor, pardon me, also confused about the drummer boy. Who knows? Who knows? If anything, maybe we should be very afraid for this drummer boy. Hopefully a priest doesn't pum him, if you catch my drift. If there ever was a time when I was going to get demonetized on YouTube, it would be for that joke. Moving on. So something that's been going on in the film industry over the last couple of weeks, and Andrew and Brent, I know that you guys haven't really been, this may be your first morning movie show that you've been attending, and welcome. I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Welcome. There's been talk going around that Paramount, the studio behind films such as the Fast and the Furious franchise, as an example, there is talk that they are going to be pulling back from theatrical releases. They are going to be pulling back from making feature-length films that will be going to theaters. And a lot of that had to do with, I believe, promoting an individual from within Paramount who was basically in charge of bringing the Paw Patrol movie to fruition, which, like, congratulations for making a movie on a property that existed like years before you were around, but hey, you get paid. And there was some talk going around that his direction for Paramount moving forward would be to kind of retreat from theaters, which really pissed me off because, and this is something I've been going on about for a long ass time, is that we can't allow Disney to monopolize theaters. And Paramount saying that they, or being suggested that Paramount is going to be retreating from theaters. If that happens, it just gives Disney that much more market share, that much more of a lion's share of box office and total revenues in North America. That is a bad thing. That is a bad thing for theaters. That is a bad thing for consumers. That is a bad thing for everybody. And in the case that Paramount does retreat from theaters, and it didn't seem like it was going to be a full retreat. Like, obviously, there's still 2 Fast and the Furious movies that are coming because they have to more fully explore space, I think. Imagine Fast and the Furious being the franchise, like, They treat it as a prequel to Star Trek, because I think Paramount also does. Yeah, Paramount also does Star Trek. You heard it here first. Fast and the Furious is in the Star Trek universe. But yeah, obviously, Paramount will continue to release, I would assume, Fast 10 and Fast 11, which are supposed to be the last two films of the Fast and Furious franchise. Those would go to theater, certainly. Oh, Fast and the Furious is Universal. Ah, shit. Am I an idiot? I mean, you guys already know the answer to that. Is it Universal Studios? Oh, shit. It might actually be. Brent, maybe you should host this show. What am I even doing? Owner, Universal Pictures. Son of a bitch. So what the hell does Paramount make? So they'll be doing Top Gun 2. That's a real one. Paramount Films. Did you mean Paramount Film? List of Paramount Picture films. Andrew saying, I want to see the Paw Patrol movie on the big screen the way cinema gods intended. Amen. So here's a list of Paramount Pictures films. And it looks like this goes into the future. So we can kind of see what we're looking at here is things that they've already agreed to do. So there's a new Transformers movie coming. Oh, good. So we're talking about Paranormal Activity, which of course is going to come out. All of these films that have like announced release dates, they are for sure coming out. Scream, Jackass Forever. Although none of these are really big films except for Top Gun Maverick and Mission Impossible 7, I would say. Not sure what Babylon is. Okay, it's the new Damien Chazelle film, and it looks like it's got a fairly substantial cast, so that'll be a somewhat larger Christmas release from the looks of it. Then you have Dungeons and Dragons, and then not a lot else. So as I was saying with Fast and the Furious, in order to create the parable, imagine every time I said Fast and the Furious, I was actually saying Mission Impossible. Because that's what I really meant. So we have Mission Impossible 7, of course, coming out next year. That will be a big release for them. And the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 will likely be a larger release for them. But outside of this, we're not talking about big movies except for Top Gun and Mission Impossible, like except for the Tom Cruise films. Oh, Brett asking about a Quiet Place spinoff and what are they spinning off? Why don't we answer that question right now? Oh, wait. This is just... Nope. This doesn't tell us anything. Move up, box office, critical response, accolades, future. In November 2020, Paramount Pictures hired Jeff Nichols to write and direct a spin-off based on the original idea from John Krasinski, who will produce. The film is scheduled to be released on in May 2021. Emily Blunt revealed that Krasinski has an idea for a potential third main installment. So there could be potentially 2 more Quiet Place films coming up. I imagine for a spin-off, it would be the initial attack, but from a slightly different perspective, like maybe from somewhere else in the world. The Walking Dead did this when they launched their second show, Fear the Walking Dead, and I think they did it again when they launched an additional show, World of Walking Dead or something like that. So that's probably what they're thinking and where they're going. In any case, to bring this all the way back to what I was talking about before, there's been a lot of moving going on inside of Paramount, and based on this Variety article written by Matt Donnelly, there has been a lack of communication, so much so that it is shocking. And yeah, I think this will probably give us a fairly good overview as to what's going on, so let's just get into this. A game of chicken is commonly known as a conflict between 2 parties where neither wants to yield, but both are hoping to avoid embarrassment and failure. I love articles that start off with dictionary definitions. They're my favorite. That seems to be the pervading psychological dynamic right now at Paramount Pictures as it continues to topple its legacy leadership structure in favor of a streaming first future under new studio chief Brian Robbins. I believe it is Brian Robbins who is the Paw Patrol fella. We're all playing chicken right now, one insider told Variety, explaining that studio employees are carrying out the work of making movies with no substantive input from Robbins, the former Nickelodeon head who replaced industry statesman Jim Giannopoulos as a Paramount chairman and CEO earlier this month. On Friday, Emma Watts, the stalwart production head who was labeled Paramount's White Knight when she joined as motion picture group president last summer, was dismissed during a morning meeting with Robbins. Ooh, that ain't good. The call came after 2 weeks of Watts trying to salvage her role as franchise builder and guardian of Paramount's commitment to the theatrical experience. In her year at the studio, Watts threw herself into the business of reviving Paramount's library of franchises, taking a particular interest in finding ways to get more Star Trek movies into production. Even skeptics, these fucking ads, even skeptics acknowledge that her intense commitment was galvanizing. Oh, how things have changed. Andrew, if you want, I can refer to you as the Paw Patrol fella. It won't be entirely accurate, but it'll be all your own. Because I'll just stop calling that other guy the Paw Patrol fella. Watts' ouster, which followed last week's exit of Paramount Communications chief Chris Pectorin, so that's 3 big people gone, have deepened a culture of anxiety and uncertainty on the lot. Numerous employees and individuals close to Viacom CBS-owned studios said, everyone is waiting for the next high-profile firing or unceremonious dismissal. The lack of communication is stunning, said one insider, who noted Robbins had only met briefly with department heads since taking over from Giannopoulos on September 10th. The person noted a lack of written or verbal communication to his new troops, which usually accompanies a regime change of this magnitude and the absence of any kind of studio town hall. That ain't great. Robbins has sent 2 memos to staff since taking the role, both after the Watts and Giannopoulos news broke. Sources close to Viacom CBS said Robbins was put on the defense following press leaks, and in his most recent note pledged more transparency. Yeah, I'm sure he did. Just going over to the chat quickly. Is Tom Cruise going to be agreeable to having Mission Impossible films streamed only? I imagine he would prefer those to be seen in theaters. Yeah, Brad, I think you're right. And that would be something that he would negotiate for pretty vigorously. I'm of the opinion, and I kind of closed this last, but when we were looking at the list of Paramount films that were going to be coming to theaters, I think if you look at a film like Top Gun 2 and Mission Impossible 7, that's an example of a film that Paramount probably still continues to make, especially if they're able to hold on to a star like Tom Cruise. But it's like the Screams and the Paw Patrols and a lot of the smaller films that go to streaming first, or go to streaming and don't end up going to theaters at all. So Paramount would then be able to save on marketing budgets and things like this for those kind of smaller films, films in the range of like a $20 to $80 million budget as an example, and then just literally only have like 2 films a year going to theaters, being like something like a Mission Impossible and something like a Top Gun 2. Andrew saying, between Top Gun and Mission Impossible, I feel like Tom Cruise pretty much is Paramount Pictures. Yep. Going back to this. Oh. Yes, this is going back to Robin's pledge for transparency. I want you to know that I value open and direct dialogue and feedback, and I'm quickly working to install a process for us here at Paramount. There will be regular communications from me to all of you, as well as company-wide, town hall-type meetings, where we will share and download information, provide updates on our work, and build a forum for feedback and questions. That kind of sounds like bullshit, and they're just going to do some Zoom meetings. There are complaints among staff that Robbins has not shared his vision of what Paramount looks like moving forward, let alone what other old guard executives might be shown the door. We understand the landscape is changing rapidly, but it'd be nice to show a little dignity, another person with knowledge of the studio said. This game of who's next isn't good for anybody. Very true. This article continues on, and I encourage you to look this up, because as I mentioned, this has Disney salivating. Disney fucking loves this. If they get to compete with less films at the box office, they are able to better dictate terms to theaters as to how much money they get, how many screens their films have to be showing on. And once again, as competition decreases, then it all just gets worse for us, the consumer. Because if Disney starts taking more of the box office cut, then theaters will either raise the cost of concessions, which are already pretty ridiculous, and they will raise the price of tickets in order to compensate for this. It also means that there'll just be less variety. It'll be Disney films, and it will be Marvel films, and it will be Pixar films, and it will be not much else. And I know there's people out there who are tickled pink by the prospect of that. But it ain't a good thing, especially in terms of supporting smaller theaters. I love my local single screen theaters. They all do great work, and none of them show Disney anymore because they just can't. Currently, those small theaters, if they were to show Disney film, they would have to show it for upwards of 3 weeks. And there would be a minimum amount of screenings per day. So you couldn't just show Shang-Chi like in the evening and then on week 2 show it in the afternoon and then show other stuff in the evening. You have to show it multiple times a day, which for single screen theaters that are servicing a population of, 10, like maybe 10,000 people in a neighborhood, that's just bad business. So they just don't deal with Disney. I'm sure a lot of you heard stories during the pandemic of movie theaters when they started opening up, having private screenings for people, and people were able to book private screenings. At my local theaters, you were able to do that with the proviso that the movie that you booked was not from Disney. They just don't deal with them at all anymore because Disney sucks to deal with now if you are an independent theater owner. And that same bullshit is going to be an issue for multiplexes as well, especially as more and more studios stop doing theatrical releases. And there's going to be a story that we're going to talk about a bit later on that will talk about this a bit more. So maybe it's time for us to move on. But Brent, just I guess maybe to cap this off, why would Paramount even want to do this? Do they really do that poorly at the box office? I don't think it's that they do poorly at the box office. I think this is more about them seeing the future as being streaming and doubling down on it. And instead of, say, spending the marketing dollars of getting a film into theaters and then have it released on Paramount Plus, they would just rather produce something for like $10 to $20 million or maybe a little bit more than that, put it straight to streaming, and then just get that continuous revenue of that $7, $8 a month. Go with the Netflix model. That's essentially what this is. And yeah, that's kind of just the future that we're heading towards. And you're right, it does seem weird, but some accountant at Paramount has crunched the numbers. They know how much all of their stuff costs. They know how much money they made from all of it. They see the returns coming in from the box office and from Paramount Plus, and they can look at all of the other studios who are doing this. They probably understand that they can't do something on the level of what Disney has done. Although, I mean, they do have Star Trek as a franchise. Not to say that it's as popular as Star Wars, but you could do something with it. But I think they just see themselves being far more profitable if they go more streaming as opposed to continuing to try to compete with Disney head to head in theaters. Dory's saying that they ended their Regal Unlimited subscription and I don't plan to come back. Was there an issue with the theater itself? Why did you end your subscription? Is it just because it makes more sense for you to do streaming? I will say that one of my local theaters, Cineplex has started doing this where you pay $10 a month and they give you a free movie and then you get discounts on popcorn, which is not a bad deal, but it's also like not Movie Pass, not what I was wanting from them. And also most of their theaters suck anyways, so whatever. But then my local theater, the Foxx Theater, has something called Film Circle, which is pretty cool, which is you pay something like $25 a month and you just get into every movie for free. And it's wonderful. Given their ticket prices, you have to watch like 3 movies and it's already paid for yourself. And I'm definitely there like at least 3 times a month. So it's not even a big deal. Plus you get other perks like discounts on concessions and things like this. So yeah, I don't know, maybe more theaters have to do that model. But Dory's saying, I will only go back to the unlimited subscription if they return to the 90-day exclusive window. Oh, I see. So you're doing this in protest of studios putting their stuff on streaming too quickly. Like, what's the point of paying for an unlimited subscription to Regal Cinemas if Dune is going to be available on HBO Max the same day that it comes out in theaters? I understand that to a certain degree. If you're already paying a lot for a bunch of streaming services, it seems pretty counterintuitive to want to subscribe to a theatrical subscription as well. Brent saying, wouldn't the same apply to Disney then? Like, are their accountants not as good as Paramount's? Wouldn't they make more money by forcing Disney Plus subscriptions and premium purchases? I think in the case of Disney, they I think it's a difference in perhaps business philosophy in that they see their larger tentpole films, the Marvel films and the Star Wars films, as almost like marketing to push people towards Disney Plus. And I think Disney probably, because of the influence they've been able to exert over movie studios, they're able to get great deals. Like, they're getting a lot of money back from the box office, and they don't want to lose that. And like, Disney films do make more at the box office than Paramount films. You know, that kind of goes back to your previous question. Um, and yeah, I just think that Disney's approach is it's certainly different than what Paramount is doing. Because right now, if you were to look at Paramount Plus, it's kind of a dead thing. Like, there's not much on it. Like, it's basically CBS All Access. So if you really want to watch NCIS and CSI, then that's the thing you go to. But from the sounds of it, they're going to be moving their focus from theatrical to streaming in order to better bolster their offerings on Paramount Plus. I don't know. There could be other factors in it that we just don't see. It could be an issue of, say, needing to get money from banks, and maybe from a business proposal standpoint, in order to get like in order to get financing for projects, it's a lot easier for them to do it if they say that it's going to be streaming as opposed to traditional distribution. I don't know. So yeah, I think there's probably a lot here that we're not seeing. Um, all we really know is that Paramount is in the throes of chaos, and it's mostly because they've decided that they are no longer going to adhere to the old model of theatrical distribution as being the main part of their distribution model. And maybe if this works out, they do go to more of a Disney type release schedule or a Disney type model. Who knows? But we will just have to wait and see. Hey, speaking of Disney at the box office, Shang-Chi surpasses Black Widow as highest grossing film of 2021. And also sub-headline here, which we're going to be talking about a bit later. New release Dear Evan Hansen is expected to take number 2 at the box office with $7.3 million. So to the article that we saw last week that asked the question, will Dear Evan Hansen surpass Shang-Chi at the box office? I guess not. It's official, everyone! Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings has surpassed fellow Marvel film Black Widow as the highest grossing film of 2021 and the pandemic at the domestic box office. On Friday, the superhero adventure starring Simu Liu captured 3.59 million from 3,952 theaters, which was enough to push it past Black Widow with a total gross of 186 million. But if it made 3.6 million, that means that Dear Evan Hansen got ahead of it. So what's actually number 1 at the box office right now? Black Widow, which premiered in July, has earned roughly 183.5 million in theaters since its release. It has earned at least 125 more million on Disney Plus. Okay. Shang-Chi, breaking this record, is a significant landmark for the movie theater business, as it was released solely in theaters with a 45 days of exclusivity, as opposed to Black Widow and many other releases which have adopted for a hybrid model. Dory, on that note, is a 45-day exclusive window enough for you to go back to Regal Cinemas? Or does it have to be 90 days? This weekend, Shang-Chi is poised to top the domestic box office charts for the 4th week straight, adding an expected 12 million to 14 million to its haul. The film should end the weekend just shy of the $200 million mark. So this is referring specifically to like the day that it became the highest grossing Marvel or film of the year. New release Dear Evan Hansen is expected to come in second place with a subdued 7.3 million from 3,364 theaters. Wow. It was in way more theaters than I thought. For those of you who were not with us on Friday, I was going through this article about Dear Evan Hansen. Essentially, this person, I believe at Variety, was asking if Dear Evan Hansen would be able to dethrone Shang-Chi. And my immediate response to that was no. And one of the reasons I was able to come to this conclusion was that we went to the Cineplex website and we actually compared theaters that were showing Shang-Chi and theaters that were showing Dear Evan Hansen, and just seeing how many screens that it was on. And so in Canada, like Shang-Chi, or I should say in Toronto, Shang-Chi at the big theaters like Scotiabank and Yonge and Dundas Square, Shang-Chi was still in like 10 theaters. Like it was still in a lot of the screens. And Dear Evan Hansen was maybe one or two. And that was it. I actually went to Dear Evan Hansen on Friday, the 7:20 screening at Yonge and Dundas Square. I was able to get like primo IMAX seat for that movie maybe 3 hours before the film started. So that kind of said to me once again that the anticipation for this film is quite low. But this number, 3,364 theaters, that really surprises me, because based on what I was seeing in Canada, I assumed that it would be like, I knew it was getting a wide release, but this says it was only in 600 less screens. Oh wait, this is the theater count, not the screen count. Okay, well that's very misleading then. Yeah, so it was in 600 less theaters, but it's not talking about the number of screens that it's actually in front of. I mean, that if we know that number, then we very easily could have said that Dear Evan Hansen was going to bomb. Come on. All right. And then this article continues to talk about Free Guy, which we don't really need to get into. So congratulations, I guess, to Shang-Chi for saving cinema. You did it. I'm sure there are theater owners all over the world who are super stoked that this movie's doing as well as it is. And no one is as happy as Disney, of course, because they're just making all that money. Now we move on to a slightly different story about the box office, which has to do with a little film called Dune. You all know that movie, right? The movie called Dune? Yeah, well, it's coming out in North America on October 22nd, but it has already been out and about internationally, and it has been making money. Last week, we were looking at its initial first weekend, and I believe it made $36 million at the international box office, which was ahead of expectations. So it had people thinking that maybe Dune had a shot of not being a financial failure at the box office. And now, according to Rebecca Rubin at Variety, that Dune has earned some more money. Based on that number, it appears it's doubled its amount. So if there's been virtually almost no drop-off from weekend to weekend, that's pretty good. Quoting the article, moviegoers, at least at the international box office, have kept the ticket sales flowing for Dune, the big-budget reimagining of Frank Herbert's landmark sci-fi novel. The movie brought in $26.3 million from 32 overseas markets in its second weekend of release, so that's only a drop-off of about, 33%? That's pretty good. It has generated $76.5 million to date, a solid tally given that many parts of the international box office have been slow to recover from COVID-19. However, the Warner Brothers and Legendary film cost $165 million to produce, meaning it will need to generate nothing short of a tidy sum in theaters to turn a profit. To do the quick calculation on that, it's typically the budget times 4 gives you what you need in order to make the money back for a studio. So we're talking about $660 million that it would need to earn. So it's already got 76 of that from international markets, and I don't believe it has released in China yet. But that's something that we can check. Actually, can we check that? Dune, China release date. Okay, so it's going the same day for China. So that'll be a big one. And we also have to remember here that what is at stake is Dune Part 2. If this movie does not do well, then they will not be making Dune Part 2. And I believe it was Dory last week was talking about how HBO Warner Brothers has already said that if the film does well in streaming, excuse me, then they will greenlight the next film. Honestly, I just wish that they had done both films at once. Like, you probably save money doing it that way, but I'm not smart like these people at Warner Brothers. And then we just go through a little bit more of the international breakdown of where this money is coming from. So I guess maybe we should just turn it back to the chat and let me know if you are excited for Dune, if you're planning on watching Dune, and if you think it's going to do well at the box office. In my little short review from TIFF, I stated that I am worried. I don't know if the film will be financially successful. To compare it back to Blade Runner 2049, and I feel like these are fair comparisons to make because it's the same director directing a new version or a new adaptation of a sci-fi franchise that is well known for sci-fi people and for movie people, but not maybe that well known for general audiences. The last time anyone cared about Dune was when they did a sci-fi channel miniseries of it like 15, 20 years ago. And so while it has the name recognition of Denis Villeneuve and a cast that everyone can kind of point to and say, hey, I really like that person, I still don't know if people are going to be turning out for it. The international box office says that people are turning out for it. I don't know if America follows this trend, though. So we shall see. I am cautiously optimistic. I want it to do well, but I also am kind of worried that it won't. Dory also pointing out that the Dune documentary got some buzz, referring to Jodorowsky's Dune, which is a great documentary if you haven't watched it. It's a very detailed overview of what it's like to produce a film with pure ambition and not giving a fuck about anything else and just wanting to make the most batshit insane thing that you can think of. It's pretty great. Also, hello, new viewer. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about Dune and whether or not it'll do well. Let me know what you think in the chat. And also, it's Monday, everyone. I keep forgetting that it's Monday. Let me know what movies you watched over the weekend and how you feel about them. I, as I mentioned, was able to watch Dear Evan Hansen on Friday. And then Saturday was The Card Counter and The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And then yesterday was The Year of the Everlasting Storm. And maybe I'll get into my thoughts on those a little bit later in the stream. But first, I'm just going to go see what Bren had to say in the chat. I don't know a single thing about Dune, so I am neutral at best on it. Yeah, that's right. We were talking about that before, and you haven't even seen the David Lynch version, which is probably for the best, to be perfectly honest. Josh is joining us as well, and he says happy Monday. Happy Monday. As happy as it can be. And you saw Free Guy over the weekend. Right on, right on. You going back to theaters, Josh? I also saw Free Guy a couple of weeks ago. I think it was his opening weekend. Fun movie. Fun little movie. I was really impressed by the lead actress in it as well. Ryan Reynolds gives you what Ryan Reynolds always gives you. But I liked the lead actress, who was... Her name is something that I, of course, remember, and that I don't need to look it up on the internet. And I'm not stalling for time while I actually find it. Her? Is that her? No, that doesn't look like her at all. Oh no, it's Jodie Comer. Yeah. Oh, I was looking at produced by. Shit, I'm an idiot. Doesn't have her name on IMDb. And by IMDb, I mean Wikipedia. This person. This person was good in Free Guy, I think. Anyways, that's not news at all. So let's get back to it. Now, I was talking about Dune and its box office potential, but then, so this is good news. This is good news for Dune. It's doing well at the international box office. There was a potential for there to be not good news for Dune, though. The Directors Guild of America, which we talked about earlier in relation to the potential IATSE strike, their guidelines for the Directors Guild Awards had basically said, we are not going to allow films into these awards that had day and date releases for streaming. Pulling the old Oscars a couple of year card where they said, we're just not going to acknowledge films that go to streaming first. Like, we are only going to hand out Directors Guild Awards to films that went to theaters first, which meant that Denis Villeneuve, who at this point is probably a frontrunner for Best Director of the Year at the Oscars, was not going to be eligible for the DGAs because Dune is coming out day and date October 22nd on HBO Max in America. But, the DGA Awards have reversed course on eligibility rules, allow for day and date releases like Dune. So I'm pretty sure someone came to the DGA and said, quit your bullshit. We cannot just ignore the fact that Denis Villeneuve fucking rules. Change your rules so he can be a part of this. And they did. So just to go through this article a bit, Dune auteur, it's a dirty word, Denis Villeneuve and King Richard director Ronaldo Marcus Green are among the acclaimed filmmakers who likely breathed a sigh of relief on Friday afternoon as the Directors Guild of America announced it had reversed course on its eligibility rules for the 2022 ceremony to allow for day and date releases to compete for the DGA Awards next year. And honestly, I'm sure there's some of you watching this who are like, who gives a shit about the DGA Awards? And to that, I would say people like me. But also, when you're in the run for the Oscars, you need to be able to create a narrative that you can use to pitch to Oscar voters. And if you can say win Best Director at the Directors Guild Awards, then that is a way of pitching yourself to Oscar voters as being someone who needs to be considered for that award. Also, the Directors Guild is made up of directors for the most part. So it's also a good indication of where directors are looking as far as who they're going to be nominating and who they're most likely to select. So in terms of trying to predict the Oscars, it's usually a good first step to look at other awards like the DGA Awards to see where they're going to go. In any other case, it's just like, good for Denis Villeneuve, because now he has a solid shot at more gold, which he deserves. The change will allow films that receive a day and date release to be eligible for the award if they have a qualifying theatrical run and are marketed as a theatrical film, the DGA said in a press release. The National Board made the decision due to the unique and unusual circumstances facing the industry this year. Definitely not last year. We weren't in this problem last year. Back in June, the Directors Guild announced it would return to pre-pandemic requirements for all movies released after June 15th. Okay. So this was something that they had to release due to the fact that I guess they didn't see a fourth wave coming. That decision meant the entire slate of Warner Brothers movies released in the remaining 6 months of the year would be disqualified from the competition, as the studio had previously made the controversial decision to debut its 2021 features both in theaters and via HBO Max. So I guess Warner Brothers kind of leaned on him and said, "Don't do that. Don't do that. It would be a shame if something happened to your Directors Guild Awards." That's what HBO and Warner Brothers said directly to the DGA. They probably didn't. And this, I think, just gives some context for the Oscar race here. Even in these early days of award season, the DGA decision is a boon for Villeneuve, a nominee in 2017 for Arrival, and an early favorite in the Best Director race among Gold Derby users and experts. Green, who directed the Will Smith film King Richard, which debuted at Telluride to strong enthusiasm and early whispers of a Best Picture candidacy, really, is also a beneficiary of the news. I've been seeing trailers for King Richard for a few weeks now, and I don't know, man. Something strange about that movie. Like, I feel like if you're going to make a Venus and Serena Williams origin story, basing it around the dad is, I don't know. I mean, if people at Telluride said it was good, it's probably good. The DGA Awards are often a reliable indicator of Best Picture glory. In its 73 years as an institution, the DGA Awards have awarded the director of the eventual Oscar winner for Best Picture 56 times, so almost 2/3 of the time. It's pretty good. Pretty good odds. This tea is not hot anymore. The tea is no longer hot. Yeah, so that's good news for Dune, good news for Villeneuve, and it actually gives us, for all of us people who try to predict the Oscars, it means that we don't lose this tool as a predictor, because if these Warner Brother films were not included and someone else wins the DGA award, but Dune is still eligible for Oscars, then we're like, what does this mean? What does this mean for us? And in fact, we wouldn't know. So I'm going to go back to chat here just to see. I think Dory told me all of the films that he saw over the weekend. Summer of '84, which he says was good. The Great Satan, which was great. Of course it was. It's got Satan in the name. Are You Lonesome Tonight was good. Prisoners of Ghostland was good. And The Power of Dog was great. So I haven't seen any of these films, but my tattoo artist, who I was hanging out with last week, said he saw Prisoners of Ghostland, and he said it was the second film ever that he has walked out of. And he's someone who's like super into genre films, super into horror films, and he couldn't fucking stand that movie. So like, I'm gonna see it because of that, because I want to be able to talk with him about it next time I get some ink. But yeah, and I also really want to see The Power of the Dog, because apparently it's real good. Not just you saying that, Dory, but a lot of people coming out of TIFF were saying it was like a really, really solid film. Josh also saw Quiet Place Part 2, and saying, now all my peeps are recommending I watch the following Netflix series. Alice in Borderlands and Squid Games. I was told to watch Parasite first. Well, I mean, yeah, you should have watched Parasite last year. Assuming that's Parasite the Bong Joon-ho film and not Parasite the anime. Who knows, though? Not sure how they link, but Melissa wants to see it anyways. I mean, you should absolutely watch Parasite. Come on, it's one of the best films of the last decade. It's super good. And I've heard that Squid Games is interesting. Although as far as Netflix series, I did watch Midnight Mass last night. Well, over the last 2 days, and it's pretty solid. It's pretty solid. Squid Games looks very gruesome, let's say, very bloody. So now that we've been talking about this a bit, I'm going to go back over here, see if any hot news has come out since we started talking. Wait, someone told you that Parasite is like Battle Royale? Who told you that? Because I want you to never talk to them again, because they are very incorrect. Oh, sorry, Squid Games is like Battle Royale. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Never mind, you can continue to talk to that person. Oh, apparently the biggest oh, maybe I should actually bring this up so you guys can see it. Yeah. This is just, I mean, I loathe to call this breaking news, but I'm kind of interested in this because of what this potentially means. The biggest IMAX in the world is set to open in Germany in time for No Time to Die. Makes sense to watch it. I just bring this up because I was able to see the premiere of, or one of the showings of Dune at the Toronto International Film Festival at the Cinesphere at Ontario Place in Toronto. And it, at one point in time, I think it might still be the largest IMAX screen in North America, but it was at one point in time the largest IMAX screen in the world, because it was the first one, I'm pretty sure. And now it seems that title now belongs to a German IMAX screen. Cool. Good for Germans. Dory, I will be releasing a separate Dear Evan Hansen review video today. I've written it. I still need to film it. As far as the card counter goes, what do I say about the card counter? Let's just bring up something for it. So you guys, actually, no, I'll just go into just me view. You don't need to see the internet for this. The card counter, the newest Paul Schrader film starring Oscar Isaac, Tiffany Haddish, Willem Dafoe, and some young kid who I've seen in a bunch of stuff, and I should remember his name, but I don't. Ty Sheridan. Didn't use the internet for that. It was in my brain. I'm just kidding. I used the internet for that. The card counter is difficult to rate for me because I don't rate films at all, but it is definitely in the shadow of Schrader's last film, First Reformed, which was probably one of the best films of the year that it came out. And this film is definitely not. And I can see, Dory, that you said you hated it. Um, and in terms of what you were saying, that the characters had no chemistry, I think that Oscar Isaacs and Ty Sheridan actually did. I think they worked fairly well together. Oscar Isaacs and Tiffany Haddish, that was a bit of a, yeah, that was a bit of a, they had some iffy moments. I also think that in a lot of cases, the dialogue that they were given to use was pretty clunky. I feel like this one could have used a couple of more polishes as far as the dialogue went. This was written by Paul Schrader, the director. I don't remember if First Reformed was written by Paul Schrader, but yeah, and this is kind of the issue. I keep comparing the two films back to each other, which is not fair to the card counter. Um, I guess what really stood out for me about the card counter is that there never really seemed to be a link between what was happening in the two different plot lines, and I consider them two separate plot lines, and this is kind of probably going to get into spoiler territory for others who are here, so I apologize for that. I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible, but essentially the card counter, as you can imagine, is about someone who knows how to count cards, about a gambler played by Oscar Isaac. And so in the film, we're given these little vignettes every now and again where Oscar Isaac explains the rules of different card games, like blackjack and how to be better at it, or poker and how to be better at it, Texas Hold'em specifically. Gives us the odds of various things going correctly for you at different games that are in casinos. And it's like, okay. But then the other side of this is that Oscar Isaac's character was part of the Abu Ghraib prisoner torture thing. And was arrested for it and went to prison for it. And that's where he learned how to count cards, was in prison. And the extent that the fact that Oscar Isaac was a card counter and gambler related to the Abu Ghraib plotline never really worked. Like, I felt that Oscar Isaac could have had, excuse me, I felt that he could have had any profession, because the story that they were trying to tell was very much based on this Abu Ghraib kind of revenge thing. Ty Sheridan, for a reason, is trying to get revenge that has to do with Abu Ghraib. And there's a bit of like a personal thing between the Ty Sheridan character and Oscar Isaac. Oscar Isaac's trying to help him out, but I just kept asking myself, like why? I think this is probably an example of a film made during the pandemic where they tried to make it on an extremely small scale. Maybe they had to rush with the script. I don't know, but just parts about it felt unfinished. Didn't feel as ambitious as First Reformed, which again, I apologize for comparing it back to that one. But yeah, that was kind of my thought on it. But, you know, comparing it again to the film that I saw right after, the Eyes of Tammy Faye, like the card counter has images in my head that are still there, whereas Tammy Faye is already starting to like recede from my mind. So I think in the very Paul Schrader way, he was able to create images that will stay with you. I just don't know if the connecting tissue of that film will stay with me. Yeah, if that makes sense. And as Dory also saying here that for them, the story plot was the best part of the movie, which is good. Like, you know, that probably should be the best part of most movies, unless you're just watching something like Midnight Mass, which is a television show, sure. But you're basically just watching really good actors do lots of great scenes together. But yeah, overall, card counter to me was a bit disappointing, although it still haunts me a little bit. And yes, Dear Evan Hansen review coming later today. I don't want to spoil that. That's going to be a good one. I can give you a preview and say that I was not very pleased with that film, but I will get into the reasons in the video that'll be coming out later today. So I'm just going to do another quick check for stuff. That's not really breaking news, but I can talk about this as well. So now that I have just check to see what's new. Oh God, I'm spoiling what I'm doing next. Oh no. I'm actually going to take a quick break. We've been streaming for about an hour and a half, so I'm about to. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back, Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to John and be right back. Gotta introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back, Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to John and be right back. Gotta introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back, Dan.
And we're back. I told you I'd be back. Seems like Randy was wrong again. I didn't get murdered. Oof, jeez. All right. Oh, still got 3 people here. You guys are amazing. Thank you very much for hanging out. So, what are we talking about next? So we already covered that. That's dead to me. Get out of here. Yes. So, the next little piece of news that I wanted to go through, this coming from Deadline, Andreas Weisman published this a couple of days ago, and it appears that James Bond will still have a home in theatrical, even though MGM was purchased by Amazon. And this kind of ties back into what I was just talking about with Dune, its eligibility at the DGA Awards, and how this could potentially affect the Oscars, as an example. So, in the case of James Bond, many have been hoping the arrival of much-delayed Bond film No Time to Die will provide a shot in the arm to the pandemic-ravaged box office. Daniel Craig's last outing as Bond opens next week for Amazon-owned studio MGM. Ahead of its bow, Craig and producer Barbara Broccoli have been discussing the franchise's past and future amid so much industry debate over streaming versus theatrical. Broccoli told Sky in the UK, "We focused on making the films for theatrical release, and I think that's our position. Amazon certainly have told us that the films will be theatrical films in the future, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, Amazon will never ever change its mind. They will always do what they say and never change their minds on anything. And we should always believe them. Always believe Amazon." Craig told the broadcaster he is grateful the Bond producers held their nerve to get his last 007 outing into cinemas rather than putting it online only. The actor said it was a joyous thing that the film will finally hit cinemas. It would have been sad to see it on a streaming service, and we got here and we're going to actually get into the cinemas, he said. So this is good news for theaters in general. This particular piece of news reminded me that MGM had been purchased by Amazon. I knew in my head that they had been purchased, but I had forgotten by who. And that's, I'm not going to say Amazon's bad, but Amazon is one of the worst companies that exists, so I wasn't too pleased when James Bond went to Amazon. So the big takeaway here is that it seems like James Bond will have a continued theatrical future. They still need to figure out who their next Bond is going to be. And I do hope that these films stay in the theater for a lot of the reasons that I stated earlier. If James Bond is going to theaters, then that's a blockbuster slot that Disney cannot occupy. I am at war with Disney. Just in case anyone need a clarification on that, Disney must be destroyed. And yes, I will still go see their movies in theaters. So call me a hypocrite if you want. But I'm a film journalist now. These are things that I have to do. But yeah, overall happy to hear that we will still have James Bond going to theaters. And the fact that these things even need to be said out loud or confirmed kind of tells you all you need to know about where the film industry is right now. Now we go on to Dear Evan Hansen. And we don't even really need to spend much time on this because we kind of covered it when we were talking about Shang-Chi. But the kind of point here that Anthony D'Alessandro is making for Deadline is that should this film have been released in theaters? Should it even have done this? So to quote the article, the failure of Universal's Dear Evan Hansen at the domestic box office with a $7.5 million opening didn't really surprise anyone after the movie was torn apart by critics post its TIFF world premiere, and it was very torn apart by critics at TIFF. But the latest misfire by a feature adaptation of a Broadway musical raises plenty of questions about the subgenre's fate at the box office. And this is actually a point that is worth talking about because there are big musicals on the way. West Side Story is coming out this year from Spielberg, and it's a big movie. They spent a lot of money on this movie. So if they're looking at this and just thinking, oh my God, maybe this big movie, this big musical that we put a lot of money into is going to fail if Dear Evan Hansen is an indication of its prospects. Personally, I don't think it is, because Dear Evan Hansen has a whole lot of baggage with it. A whole lot of baggage. Whereas West Side Story is, the original at least, that was released in the 50s, is considered one of the greatest movie musicals of all time. So there's a lot of good stuff that they can pull from. It's directed by Spielberg, so it'll have his particular flair to it. And yeah, I think it's going to go fairly well. Will it be like a $200-300 million film? I don't know. I don't know if people go to a movie theater in a pandemic to watch a musical. Dear Evan Hansen seems to suggest that they don't, but as I said, Dear Evan Hansen has its own baggage, and, as the article points out, it was ripped apart by critics. Should Dear Evan Hansen, in its limited appeal, have had its debut on streaming instead of in theaters, or go day and date theatrical and streaming? After all, NBC Universal streaming service Peacock desperately needed the product, so much so that they decided to make the sequel to the blockbuster horror reboot Halloween Kills a day-and-date attraction on October 15th. Ah, that's so fucking stupid. That movie came on tracking Thursday to a $45 to $50 million opening, which had box office analysts perplexed how such a gross is possible when it's also available on streaming services premium subscription tier. Probably because they didn't... Probably because people don't know that it's going day and date. That's the first I've heard of Halloween Kills going day and date. And it also doesn't apply to me because we don't really have Peacock in Canada. And I think a lot of people don't even have Peacock. Like, what? People just have it to watch The Office, I think, and not much else. But in regards to Dear Evan Hansen, what remains shocking is how a critically beloved and popular stage musical, which made over $226 million in its roughly 4 years on Broadway, becomes simply dismissed on the big screen. And I think, honestly, a lot of that has to do with if you have 4 years of something, then people will start speaking about it more critically. And the way that Dear Evan Hansen approaches themes like suicide and things like this are not really appropriate in today's day and age, in my mind. And once again, that's something I will get into in my Dear Evan Hansen review coming out later today. Universal wasn't doing anything experimental here with Dear Evan Hansen. This wasn't Gaspar Noé or Ari Aster's upside-down version of Dear Evan Hansen, which would have been so much better. Similar to Universal's Les Miserables and Mamma Mia franchise, which are combined grossed $1.45 billion at the worldwide box office. And also, Les Miserables is not a franchise. What are you talking about? The studio made the most faithful take on Dear Evan Hansen as they could, tapping Steven Chbosky, a filmmaker known for emotional young adult dramas, and casting the project with such awards-lauded actresses like Amy Adams and Julianne Moore, who only shared one scene in the whole film. It's a bad look. Rising book-smart star Caitlin Dever, who actually did well in the film, and staying true to the musical's roots by keeping Ben Platt, who originated and wowed in the title role with his low to high emotional singing. It was a logical green light given the musical's momentum at the time for Universal to win the bid on the package. Furthermore, Dear Evan Hansen came from producer Mark Platt, who the studio has a long-standing relationship with, and he's also Ben's father. Then, why in God's name did the musical go sideways? The most immediate answer about Dear Evan Hansen's downfall is a simple fact that in a prolonged pandemic, those turning to cinemas are looking for escapism, not a near 2.5-hour cry, especially a ballad film drama. However, even pre-pandemic, a musical with a protagonist who isn't likable or sympathetic is difficult to sell. And yeah, this is something that I get into in my review as well. Evan Hansen is a tough character. He's just a tough character to give a shit about, for me personally. Also, putting this film at Christmas arguably may have not made much of a difference. The movie would have still had the same inherent problems. I think Uni knew this, which is why they didn't screen the film in advance for critics ahead of TIFF. Yeah, makes sense. Another pandemic conundrum for Universal is that Broadway musicals cater to older audiences, and we know the demographic is having a very hard time turning out at cinema during the pandemic. Dear Evan Hansen was geared at young adults, not young adults and parents, so unfortunately Universal loses the latter's core audience for the film. That's actually pretty interesting. The under 35 demo repped 71% of Dear Evan Hansen's audience, so the older people who typically turn out for musicals were not there. And we don't have to get much further into this. I think this is a fairly interesting piece. I don't know how much of it I agree with. I think, honestly, and yeah, the degree to which the critics' response to the film actually killed it, the critics at TIFF, I don't know how many people actually pay attention to that, as we see like films that don't do well with critics often do well at the box office. So to the extent to which that sunk this film is dubious in my mind. I do think there is a case to be made that people probably don't want to watch a 2.5-hour long musical in theaters right now. And the idea that it could have gone straight to streaming is an interesting one. I also don't know the budget of Dear Evan Hansen. Let's see. Can we find that out? Budget. It had a budget of $27 to $28 million. Yeah, come on. That easily could have gone to streaming. Easily could have gone to streaming first. You could even have like made that so much less if you just don't have Amy Adams and don't have Julianne Moore in it, because I'm sure aside from Ben Platt, like they're taking the largest paychecks. So yeah, I think this person is right, and this probably was a misfire to put this out into theaters, or even to have it as a wide release. Like have it as a limited release, let it get what it gets, and then go straight to streaming. I think that probably would have been a better business decision at least. Dory asking, worst musical, Evan Hansen or Sia music? Do you mean the music from Evan Hansen? Wait, what is Sia? I mean, I know who Sia is, but did she was part of Dear Evan Hansen somehow, right? Did she do like some kind of write an original song for it? I'm not actually sure what it is. Okay, Dora, you let me know what you're talking about in that question and I'll return to it. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue on to a story that we were talking about last week, having to do with Tom Felton. He is, of course, Draco Malfoy from the Harry Potter universe, and he was at a celebrity golf tournament in the lead up to the Ryder Cup, I believe, and he collapsed. He had to be rushed off the course, and we didn't really know what his condition was. So we were all hoping that he make a swift recovery, because we here at Cinemateq like it when people live. Not to say that his condition was so bad that he may live, or that he may die. And I just see that we've got potentially some new viewers here. If you're new to the stream, let me know in the chat that you're here. And if there's any kind of film news that you would like me to discuss or discuss with me in the chat, let me know and we'll bring it up. We're also keeping an eye on the breaking news and just talking about movies that we've watched recently. So truly a moving morning show this is. To quote the article that Sarah El Mahoud, the second one from her today, many Harry Potter fans had cause to worry on Thursday when it was reported that one of the beloved stars of the franchise, Tom Felton, had collapsed on the ground while taking part in a celebrity golf match in Wisconsin. No updates were sent out the following day, but Saturday morning, the actor finally broke his silence about his health. Looks like he said, "Yeah, a bit of a scary episode, really, but I'm on the mend. People have been taking really good care of me. Thank you very much to anyone who sent messages of get well soon because I'm on the mend. Officially on the mend is Tom Felton." The actor did not go into detail about what happened or what he specifically on the mend from, but more importantly, it looks like Tom Felton is doing okay and getting the medical attention he needs. All right. And, it looks like we have the official video. Oh, wait, this is not it at all. This is him just playing acoustic guitar. Imagine I get copyrighted strike from this.
Boys and girls, just wanted to say a huge thank you for all the lovely well wishes as of recent. Yeah, a bit of a scary episode, really. But on the mend, people have been taking really good care of me. So thank you very much for anyone that has sent messages of get well soon, because I am on the mend officially. And in case you were worrying, don't you worry, cause...
All right, stopping that so I don't get copyright striked. Don't want to repeat a last week. Oh, by the way, while I'm on that subject, last week you may have noticed that we had to stop the live. Well, the live stream was stopped because we were doing a live reaction to a Bollywood film that one of our viewers suggested that I watch. And so we will not be reacting to anything that studio puts out ever again. There's no way that I can have a live stream be blocked for like 3 days. They did release their claim on the video finally, but it's pretty silly, honestly. You should never put a block policy on your trailers. That's dumb. Studios of the world, just so you know. Also, we have CK in the chat. Hello, welcome. I am doing pretty well. I'm doing this full time now, so I feel pretty great about that. Last time was the Oscar stream. Yeah. Thank you for dropping by. We've got a lot to discuss in terms of the Oscars and awards and things like that. Look out for a special live stream that'll probably be on the weekend, either this weekend or next weekend. Look out for a bunch of stuff. Maybe I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, we're going to be streaming every day, basically. Well, every weekday until the Oscars. And then after that, because this is just what we do now. This is where we hang out every morning. So now that we know that Tom Felton is okay, we can now move on to a couple of pieces of news that also kind of just like wrap up what we were talking about last week. On Friday, the main story was Chris Pratt being selected as the voice of Super Mario himself, Mario, if you want to call him by his full name. And then also the fact that Anya Taylor-Joy was cast as Princess Peach for the Super Mario Brothers movie that is being done by Illumination Studios. And apparently, they reacted to this casting news with sweet messages. And as an aperitif, we're going to just look at those sweet messages. This was done by Sarah El Mahmoud. Third article today from her. Got a hat trick for the first time on this show. Chris Pratt will be playing. Yep, we know all that stuff. When Chris Pratt was announced as Mario, it was met with a bit of uncertainty from fans, also people just making all kinds of hilarious memes, some of which went straight to campaigning for Danny DeVito to take on the role instead. I did not see that, but that is an interesting choice. Even so, Pratt took to his Instagram to share a sweet reason why Mario is a dream role for him, and I think we actually we saw this video last week. He talks about how he used to play Super Mario Brothers in the arcade and now realizes that he it's just like a nice little A to B kind of story. And then I did not hear about what Anya Taylor-Joy said, though. That's what I want to know about. Prat jokingly said Mario's most popular phrase in the video in a pretty funny way. He's like, hey, it's me. It's Mario. Oh, Chris Pratt. You joker. His co-star, Anya Taylor... Ugh. Why can't I not speak? Anya Taylor-Joy has been nabbing role after role as of late. That's true. She's in pretty much everything. And she's also playing Furiosa in Mad Max. That's so sick. The actress shared her reaction about the role to Instagram as well. I guess showing us that she can rock a pink dress just as well as Princess Peach, which we all knew. And she captioned it, "Here we go," which, you know, I like it. I'm into it. It's short and sweet. Taylor-Joy simply says, "Here we go," posting a side-by-side image of herself in pink with the video game heroine. Also joining the cast are Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong, and Charles Martinet, the original voice of Mario, will be making some special cameos throughout the movie. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is set to come out December 21st, 2022. So that's nice. I'm glad that Anya Taylor-Joy was able to make this little Mario reference here. I guess there really isn't a line that Princess Peach says that is her own that she could have used instead. Brent's saying that they have the sudden urge to play Mario 64 now. Does Anya Taylor-Joy always give you that urge? But also, Brent, you can't play Mario 64 right now because you're working. While listening to me, but you're working. So don't you dare play Mario 64. I actually work for your job, and they're making me keep an eye on you. This is how I'm funding this channel. I'm spying. I'm a spy. Just kidding. Do whatever the hell you want, but keep watching this show until we're done. This watch time is so crucial. Also, if you're here and you haven't yet, please like this live stream. That also helps. And after the live stream becomes a video, when the live stream is done, get in those comments as well. Engagement. It's what I live and die for. So moving on now to what potentially could be the very last article we talk about. The search for the new James Bond, because of course No Time to Die is the last one with Daniel Craig, will begin next year. So I don't know why it would have taken this long. I can't imagine why they wouldn't have started the search for the next James Bond, like, quietly in behind the scenes type stuff. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't have started doing this at the exact moment when Daniel Craig said, "This is my last film." And I feel like that's probably what they have been doing. But we'll see what this article has to say. This comes from Jeremy Mathai from /film. Don't put off tomorrow. What you can do today is generally good advice, but an exception can understandably be made when it comes to figuring out the next steps of the James Bond franchise. Although he hasn't starred in the most 007 films, that would be a tie between Sean Connery and Roger Moore. Although Moore gets the edge in canonical films, Daniel Craig will end up as the longest tenured Bond actor in the decades-old franchise when No Time to Die finally releases in theaters and officially concludes his impressive stint. With that display of commitment to the role, it's no surprise that James Bond producers aren't exactly rushing the actor out the door to usher the next replacement in. By all accounts, the search for the next James Bond won't commence until 2022, and I imagine that we would then say that the next James Bond film probably doesn't come out until 2025 or 2026. I would assume. Let's just say that if it were a change, let's just say that if I were in charge of finding the next actor to fill Daniel Craig's shoes as James Bond, I'd be putting off the decision for as long as humanly possible as well. Well, I mean, that would make you a bad business person, but okay. Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, the longtime shepherds and caretakers of the Bond movies, made a recent appearance on BBC Radio 4's Today Show and revealed how eager they were to get started on the hunt for the next Bond, which is to say, not at all. According to Variety, Broccoli put it in no uncertain terms whatsoever. "Oh God, no. We're not thinking about it at all. We want Daniel to have his time of celebration. Next year, we'll start thinking about the future." That's bullshit. That's bullshit. There is no chance that these people who are in charge of one of the most profitable film franchises in the world have not at least thought about who the next James Bond is going to be. That is just simply ridiculous. I understand why they're saying it publicly, because as they say, they want to focus on Daniel Craig because he has been one of the better James Bonds from throughout the years. And that's actually another article that maybe I'll touch on, a little bit of bonus. Yeah, but this bullshit. Of course they're thinking about it. It's hard to argue the fact that Craig deserves a proper swan song with no other distractions, especially after putting his body on the line in these movies for as long as he has. When he was first cast in the life-changing role of 2006's Casino Royale, with no small amount of hair color-related controversy, as silly as that is now to look back on, the British actor could have been forgiven for maybe not quite grasping how everything would be different from that point onwards. Instead, as Broccoli recalls, Craig was appropriately cautious about accepting the part and was handled the fame as well as can be expected. To quote, "We're very, very lucky to get him to play this role. We could see he was reluctant to do it because he knew it would change his life, which it obviously has. It's changed his life, but it hasn't changed him. What he's enabled us to do with the franchise is really explore the emotional life of Bond and go into the person and complexity and conflicts that happen within the Bond character." That makes you wonder, like, what they're going to do with the new James Bond. Like, are they just going to try to do this all again? Are they going to try to shift into a more action-oriented, like, we don't give a shit about his past kind of thing? Like, are we always going to have to be going into the past of James Bond? And, like, to what degree does this change now that we kind of have this established idea that like Bond is different people who just are called James Bond /007. Like everyone who's 007 is called James Bond. It's like their spy name or whatever. And so like the Sean Connery Bond and Daniel Craig Bond are not the same Bond, but different Bonds. You know what I mean? Like canonically, you get it, right? Yeah. So like, does this mean that we're now just going to be exploring that territory and like going through the past of each individual Bond as they come out? I don't know. Also, if you're here, let me know who you think should play the next Bond, because if they say they're not thinking about it, even though they are, doesn't mean that we can't speculate on it. Who do you want to see play the next James Bond? Of course, the future can't be put off indefinitely. Once audiences finally get their chance to see No Time to Die and Craig is given the farewell he most certainly earned, the producers will have to figure out the franchise's next step. As Broccoli puts it, "We'll keep going. Next year it'll be the 60th anniversary of the Bond film, so we're looking forward to the new chapter, whatever it brings. We're not quite sure at the moment. Right now, we just want to celebrate No Time to Die and Daniel's extraordinary achievement." With Amazon's acquisition of MBM Studios coinciding with the upcoming change in actors, the franchise could be in for quite a bit of change in the coming years. Broccoli and Wilson have been outspoken about maintaining a sense of exclusivity and prestige with James Bond, and Craig himself has weighed in about what kind of actor should succeed him. No Time to Die will be coming to theaters October 8th, 2021. And let's just take a quick look at... Oh, this is going back to an article we looked at last week where Daniel Craig says on female Bond, there should simply be better parts for women. So that was kind of like a women should not be James Bond type thing. Dory is saying, "I would love Superman and Witcher star Henry Cavill to play 007. Yeah, I think that would be a pretty solid pick for like a traditional James Bond, the kind of clean cut, very British kind of James Bond. He also has a physicality about him that is fairly impressive. We know this from Superman. We know this from Mission Impossible as well. I feel like he might be seen as too traditional of a pick. And I think that with the next Bond, even if it's not like a person of color or a woman, it will be a non-traditional type Bond. To me, the casting of Henry Cavill would be kind of similar to the casting of Pierce Brosnan. It's just, he'll be very smooth while also while still like being a bit more physical than Pierce Brosnan's Bond was. So, I don't know. Maybe they try and find someone who kind of is more like a Sean Connery Bond, but like less misogyny. I don't know. Brent saying, "I think he's too old, but Idris Elba would have made a great Bond if he was cast instead of Daniel Craig." I wholeheartedly agree. Idris Elba is the best James Bond that we will never have, and it makes me sad. And I think he is too old now as well. He's like well into his 50s. So if they were to do it with him, it would be one film. It would be one film only, which is not to say they wouldn't do that. because there is a Bond film that has only did one film. George Lansby, I believe, is his name. In His Majesty's Secret Service is the film, and that is actually a pretty good James Bond film. If you can get over the fact that, like, when the guy who delivers the "I'm Bond, James Bond" line, like near the beginning, it really seems like he's an imposter. The first time I watched that film, I was like, that's not James Bond. That guy's a liar. And I knew that, like, it wasn't a Sean Connery Bond. I knew that it wasn't a Roger Moore Bond. But when that guy said it, when George Lansby said it, I was like, that's not James Bond. But then as the film goes on, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, this guy's James Bond. I actually like this James Bond. Not my favorite Bond. Not my favorite Bond at all. But he did a good job in that one outing. Dory saying, most likely Henry Golding will be the next Bond pick. That I would be okay with. I would be pretty okay with that. Henry Golding, I think, is starting to prove himself more and more in action films. And I'm pretty sure we're not getting any more G.I. Joe films after how Snake Eyes performed at the box office. So him getting into a new franchise like James Bond would be great for him, great for his career. And I think actually he would do really well. I think it would also be a similar Bond to Pierce Brosnan. I feel like he would be the very kind of like smiley and quippy Bond, as opposed to the Daniel Craig, Timothy Dalton Bonds that just kind of like smile and quip when they need to, but are mostly about punching you in the face. So yeah, I guess it comes down to then, like, if we were to have an unconventional Bond, what would that look like? Like, would it be an American? I know that would probably never happen. Never happen. But if we're talking about ways of casting an unconventional Bond, what would that entail? A ginger would be unconventional, although considering how much flack they got for Daniel Craig having blonde hair in Casino Royale, probably gingers will never ever be James Bond. I would be interested in a James Bond that is not so into the big action set pieces, but is more into like the minutia of spycraft. And for that, you could go with, say, like a David Tennant. That would be pretty fun. Like more of just like a wiry person, or maybe even get someone who you, the kind of person who can kind of just slip in and out of any scene and you don't really notice who they are. Don't get someone who's like super, super obvious, I guess. So not a Dave Bautista. Couldn't be him. He's also not British. Yeah, I mean, Henry Golding does make a lot of sense, doesn't he? I just wonder if he's going to be able to pull off the sort of anger that James Bond tends to have, or can have. He was good in Snake Eyes, and I don't know if it was like if I would say it's the anger or the seriousness that, that really hurt Snake Eyes. Or hurt him in that film. But I don't know. Oh, CK, that's interesting. Tom Hiddleston. I think, yeah, that probably falls into the same category as a Henry Golding or Henry Cavill. I can only imagine them just like smiling. I think Tom Hiddleston, as he's shown with Loki, he can imbue that with a bit of edge, a bit of I don't want to say sarcasm, but when he's nice and he's smiling at you, he can also be menacing, which I don't know if Henry Golding can pull off, and I don't know if Henry Cavill can actually pull that off. And it's actually kind of why Idris Elba also would have been a great pick, because he can smile at you and say a lot of different things with his face. And I think Tom Hiddleston also has that ability, so that would be an interesting. That would be a good pick as well. I'd be interested to see that. All right, I'm going to take this time now to just check in to see if there's any breaking news. We have been streaming for about 2 hours and 10 minutes. Let's see. There's obviously, news breaking all the time, but not all of it's worth talking about. All right, so here's one. Here's one that I saw yesterday, and we now have a /film article for it, so we can just take a quick look at this. The Last of Us, the video game that the first one everyone loves. Second one, a little divisive. But it's one of the largest video game franchises for PlayStation at the current time. It is getting a movie. Wait, it is a movie, isn't it? If it's a TV show, I need to click away from this because we don't do TV shows on this show. Oh, it is a TV adaptation. Get this shit out of here. Why slash film? What are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? I'll come back to chat in a quick second. But if you have any more James Bond things, let me know and we can talk about those. It's too bad we never got like George Clooney as James Bond. Once again, I know that an American would never play it, and I wouldn't want George Clooney to have a kind of British accent or his type of British accent and try his best at being a James Bond, but yeah. Oh. I was going to say a new Netflix trailer, but it's for a TV series. Well, we don't care about that. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's much going on. I'm also just gonna check in on Twitter as well. Hey, did you guys know that the morning movie show is live? Don't forget to follow me on Twitter so you don't miss this kind of stuff. I'll just drag this out over here. Sometimes I get trailer announcements in my Twitter feed before I get them in the other ways that I look at stuff. Oh shit! Hey, there's a trailer reaction. God damn, it happens as soon as I look for it. Ladies and gentlemen, the trailer for the new Paul Thomas Anderson film has just dropped, so let me cue that baby up. Licorice Pizza. Did I call it Plaza? So, just get this all figured out. I'll just do a couple of quick chat hits before we get into this, because I'll probably end up clipping this one and turning it into a video for the channel later as well. CK sent, or I think Brent first said here, I feel like Tom Hiddleston is way too connected to Loki, and it would be difficult to separate him from the character. Yeah, that's why you shave his head. You do one of these, and suddenly Tom Hiddleston is someone very, very different. I just don't. CK saying, I just don't want him to be only pretty and charming. I think the edgy take Daniel Craig. Or that you like the edgy take that Daniel Craig gave to it. Yeah, that's why Timothy Dalton is the best James Bond. First one to give us an actual edgy Bond. And then Dory saying, best musical, Dear Evan Hansen or Cats the Motion Picture? I don't know, man. Can I just shoot myself in the face and not answer that question? I think probably Dear Evan Hansen. I mean, Dear Evan Hansen's the better film, but I just kind of like, I just left Cats confused, whereas with Dear Evan Hansen, I was a little angry. So, I don't know. Yeah, I'll just shoot myself in the face instead of answering that. So you guys saying, I feel George Clooney on Bond might turn out like Batman and Robin. Nipples and all. Nipples and all. And with that said, I'm just going to introduce this like it's its own video, so apologies if it's a little strange. What's up, cinephiles? It's time to watch the brand new trailer for the brand new Paul Thomas Anderson film, Licorice Pizza, coming in from MGM Studios. Let's take a watch. God damn it, this is going to get picked up. Why do you use these songs? Although I do appreciate David Bowie in my life. So we got a story about a couple of teenagers. One of them is way bigger.
I'm a showman. That's what I'm meant to do.
One of them appears to be a stage actor of some kind.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Bradley Cooper.
Who my girlfriend is.
Barbra Streisand?
Barbra Streisand.
Sand.
Sand, yeah, like sands. Like the ocean, like
Barbra Streisand.
Did you guys know how to say Barbra Streisand properly?
Sand.
Sand.
Nice little bit of human there.
This is fate that brought us together.
That's Sean Penn as well. Oh yeah. So, kind of a lover's quarrel type film set in amongst Hollywood actors.
Can I touch them?
See you tomorrow.
That's an interesting interaction between what are presumably teenagers.
I think it's weird I hang out with Gary and his friends all the time.
Oh, you should never drink gasoline.
Gary and his 15-year-old friends all the time.
I just want to sing this song, and I know I shouldn't want to sing this song. No, wait, I should always want to sing this song. David Bowie rules.
I'm gonna forget you.
Waterbeds?
Just like you're not gonna forget me.
You know what they're good for. Bradley Cooper doing Bradley Cooper things. Ooh. What is Tom Watts doing in this film? Oh my god. Is he playing Frank Sinatra? No. Licorice Pizza. I don't know what to make about this. Are we doing 2001: A Space Odyssey? All right. Good. Like happy about that. Happy about that trailer. I like the idea of oh, no, we don't want this. We don't want you whatever going to be. We want to go back. I can't believe this stream is still live, right? I didn't get taken down for having David Bowie. Okay, thank God. Just want to click through here and see if there's anything interesting. The one thing that I was really curious about is that they show the name. No, I don't want close. For God's sakes. God damn it. Let me do the thing. Hello, Rocco. Oh yeah, so this is what I wanted to see. All right, I was hoping that this was going to give us insight into the movie that they're making and what they're doing, but this just appears to be a TV commercial for a Valentine's something. Production name Fat Jerking? No. I think that says Fat Jerking. Okay. There you go. Now you know what commercial they were making. So yeah, these are obviously our two protagonists. I don't know. Did it seem like to anyone that they were in a kind of competition with each other in terms of actors? Like there's obviously something between them and they may be trying to outdo each other or like they're rivals or things like this, but they are also not going to be competing for the same roles. So I'm wondering like what the connection is between them. At first it just seemed like they were very tall for their age, and maybe that was what we were going to be going with. That was kind of highlighted in one of the early scenes where they had the male character dude, yeah, right here doing auditions. Oh, right here doing auditions. He's obviously like way bigger. So perhaps what we're talking about here is a former child actor who's continuing to be put up for child actor type roles, and he's now competing against people who are way younger than him who have not hit puberty yet. And somehow that leads him into a kind of relationship with this woman. And then Bradley Cooper is also involved as the person who is dating Barbra Streisand. Yeah. This kind of actually reminded me of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This door strikes me as being very similar to the one used in Sharon Tate's house. It's probably not anywhere close, but that just reminded me of that. Yeah, not much else to say about this. I feel like this is more of a teaser than it is an actual trailer, but I also kind of like the idea that I'm not really sure what the connection or what the plot is, other than it appears to be a kind of lover's quarrel / rivalry between two young actors in Hollywood. And also, just based on Sean Penn saying, "I'm coming for you, Nancy," makes me think that he's playing Frank Sinatra. But there's no way he could be playing Frank Sinatra. Licorice Pizza. Go into Wikipedia. So let's see. Okay. So Gary, a child actor and high school student. Benny Safdie is in this film. That's cool. But who is Sean Penn playing? Ooh, Christopher Walken is in this as well. They didn't show us him at all. How dare they? Okay. Well, I guess we don't know at all what Sean Penn is or who Sean Penn is. Maybe that'll get updated at some point. But yeah, there we go. The trailer for Licorice Pizza. Thank you very much for watching this trailer reaction here on Cinemateq, and I'll see you in the next video. Just kidding, live people. I'm not actually going away yet. That was just for the that's just for the people who are going to see the clip of that later. I don't know how well that one's actually going to turn out because I didn't have much to say about it. I will say, though, that I've been looking at the analytics of the last couple of trailer reactions I've done, and it's pretty hilarious. Like, people are pretty engaged for the actual reaction to the trailer itself, and then they just fuck right off when I start going into the breakdown of what I think the film is going to be about. So I'm going to try to make those reactions a bit shorter to try to optimize that. And I guess that just brings us back to, are there more breaking news? And now we get all the breaking news about Licorice Pizza trailer. So we beat everyone. We beat everyone to the punch. We made history today. We've got some reviews from San Sebastian, but we're not going to worry about that. In general, I don't really plan on covering other people's reviews during these live streams, so just as an FYI, it's not really something I'm interested in talking about. This, I want to be more news focused. So yes, this appears to be the end of the road for today. The Licorice Pizza trailer, probably a good place to end things. So thank you everyone for coming out for the live stream, for watching. You are all wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, just like I will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day of the week. That's what we're doing on this channel till the end of time, or until I have to go get a real job again. And hopefully I never have to get a real job ever again in my life. Please make sure to like this if you haven't already. And if you can, share this channel with people in whatever way seems most appropriate. We're trying to get as many people in here as we can so we can keep having really good conversations about film. So thank you once again. I appreciate you all. You rule. And I will see you hopefully